intro to 87. Hey, Mr. Accountant, here's my box of receipts.
What, you're just going to give me a box of receipts? You're not even
I'm paying you money.
Well, what's this one? This is for the Beanie Babies? Is this a business expense?
Yes.
What about this one over here?
It's an investment into Beanie Babies.
What about this one in McDonald's?
I don't eat at McDonald's. I'm vegan. How dare you accuse me?
This must be your neighbors.
My neighbors.
You need to get your taxes right, man. You need to get it right. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
You're fired.
This is the Simple Wholesaling Podcast, episode 87.
We're so dumb. Now introducing your host, Brett Snodgrass.
What's up, all you simple wholesalers out there? Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Simple Wholesaling Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Snodgrass, and I'm with my wonderful co-host and dramatic host, Jaren Barnes.
I know, our interests have been like intense lately. I don't know what's going on. Like,
I feel like we're going to wrestle.
Yeah, I'm like, been listening too much to that C.T. Fletcher, man. Honestly, guys, if you do not like cussing, do not listen to the man at all. But if you can look over the cussing, that's some of the most inspiring. Get it, take the day. He has this one track called Overcoming Fear or something. It's called Fear. And he on the video, he like sits there and he looks at himself in the mirror and he's like, I'm gonna eat fear for lunch. He's like really, he's like a preacher almost. Like his dad was a preacher, but was like really abusive and stuff. So he'll in the middle of workouts, he'll bust out praying, and like I think he knows God, like I think he knows Jesus, but he's like his gym's called Iron Addicts. He actually doesn't. He has a jacked up heart. Like he actually was told by doctors that he can't work out anymore, otherwise he's at risk for a heart attack but he loves working out so much, he's like, I'll die for it. So wow. He's cleaned up his diet. I've just found out he's recently gone vegan, which I'm like, what? But yeah, definitely check this dude out if you can stand the cussing.
Sounds good, man. Well, hey, and with that, guys, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We got a great show for you guys today, and because of the tax intro, we are interviewing a guy named Cody today. He is a cop who has turned certified tax coach, and he talks about saving money on taxes and living a tax-free life. He's written a best-selling book on the secrets of a tax-free life, and talks about all these write-off strategies, and really just talks about something and gives you guys some knowledge about taxes, which we don't ever want to talk about, but it is so important to talk about because your biggest expense is taxes, and you don't feel like that it is because you're not writing a check for it all of the time. And but really it is the biggest expense depending on your tax bracket. So that's who we're interviewing today, Cody. But other than that, we got some cool stuff going on. And what do you got going on?
Man, I'm just listening to C.T. Fletcher. What are you doing?
Nice. Awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited for the holidays.
Hey, do we have an iTunes review of the week?
We do. Yes. What? We do have an iTunes.
2 days in a row. Or 2 weeks in a row. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Let me pull it up here. Our iTunes review of the week is Can't Wait Till Tuesdays. Man, awesome. Love that. This is by Brave in LLC. And, okay.
I'm showing it to you so it's easier.
Okay.
I was trying to be ninja and not let people know that I was tapping you on the
Oh, no problem. It's so I'm gonna just pull it up here. So sorry for
that
the
one's like cut off slightly.
I know. I'm sorry.
So you might want to read the one.
Why don't you go ahead and read it?
All right, sounds good. I found Brett's podcast about 1.5 years ago. At first, I think I found some YouTube videos, and that led me to the podcast. Brett's message of Christ first was evident from the very first thing I watched. I find myself anticipating Tuesdays to listen to his podcast. The guests he has on are always informative, but the spiritual foundation section is always on point.
Man.
I have not found another podcast like it. If you are a believer and love real estate, you won't be disappointed in the content that Brett puts out. Brett's co-host does a great job of keeping it light and serious at the same time. The transparency of both hosts is uncommon. Man.
Thank you.
Another slow clap.
Get those tissues.
I know where the tissues at.
Get those tissues.
I know. Why do people like us so much? I think we're a bunch of losers, to be honest. But hey, man, thank you so much for the encouragement.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Brave and LLC. Appreciate it. And we just love doing this, putting out great content, interviewing great guests. We're trying to get the best, information for you guys possible. Just being real too. That's what it's all about. Like, just being transparent, and love doing the Spiritual Foundations, guys. So if you guys love what we do here, we will read it on the air. If you leave us a review on iTunes, please go there right now and leave us a review. We appreciate it.
Hey, man, talking about them tissues before we go on, do you know what I love about the podcast the most?
That your voice sounds louder in the mic?
No.
Oh.
I love getting to hang out with you.
Thank you. Me too, man. Me too. All right, go.
Way to make it awkward. All right. Brett's Inside of the Week. That was awesome.
All right. So today's Inside the Week, guys, we always talk about going to your local networking events, your local RIAs, and today we're going to talk about how can you be the coolest dude at the RIA.
You have to have the last name like Snodgrass.
Barnes. No. You have to change your name to Jaren Barnes and wear vegan hats. That's all you have to do.
Definitely. Brian Snyder is way better at networking meetings than I am. Like, our marketing guy, he honestly should just do my job. He's just like better in every way.
He does do really well. He always shows up with his little clipboard and his tucked in Simple Wholesaling shirt.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, his brain just like, he always thinks
so
of everything.
Prepared.
Yeah, like ultra prepared. Like, oh man, we should have brought this. He's like, oh yeah, here it is. You know?
I know. Man, I wish I had Post-it notes. Oh, I got them in my pocket. Here you go. I wish I had scissors. Here we go.
We should nickname him MacGyver.
So funny.
Wholesaler MacGyver.
So how can he be Brian Snyder at the local RIA meetings? Well, number one, you have to go prepared. You have to go with a plan and make sure you got the materials that you have. If you're going to go up there and grab the mic and talk about a property, make sure you have flyers or information about the properties to hand out. Business cards. Make sure that you have a plan. Whenever I go to these local RIA meetings or my mastermind meetings, I have like a plan. Okay, what do I want to accomplish at the end of this meeting? Do I want to talk to these particular people and sit down with them and have a 10-minute conversation? Do I want to set up a meeting later with them for coffee, or do I just want to talk to 5 or 10 people? So have a plan and do what you need to do with that. Be prepared. And so a couple other, key bullet points are listen twice as much as you speak. So you're always listening, and when you're listening, you're trying to see if you can bring value to that person that's speaking. So listen twice as much as you speak. Don't be boastful. Don't be prideful. It's a huge turnoff when people go up there and they're like, yeah, I did, 20 deals this month or 30 deals. I made $1 million. Who cares? Nobody cares, No
one believes you anyway. Because if you actually did do that, you probably wouldn't be telling people.
Right. So. Yeah. So no, and honestly, people don't care. We're always trying to impress this like invisible person up here that we think that people actually care how well we're doing, and really the only one that cares is probably yourself. So it's not about you. It's about them.
Hit it right on the hammer, Brett. Good job.
So it's about them. So how can you bring value to them? Again, be genuine, be a problem solver, and 2 great questions to ask is, what is the best thing happening in your life or business right now? So again, you're asking about them. What is the most challenging thing happening in your life and business right now? So you're trying to figure out how you can help them and bring value to them. So going to local RIA meetings is awesome. So these are some key tips that you guys can use. Write these down, take them with you, so that you're prepared.
Spiritual Foundation. What if God was one of us? Just as love like one of us. What? You didn't like my singing?
That was it. That's all. That's all it is. That's what we're going with.
All right, now it's here.
Spiritual Foundations, guys. That's it. Anyways, so spiritual foundations, guys, we're going to go to 2 Corinthians 9:7. And basically it says, each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. You know, this my wife says this all the time, and we talk to our kids about this. And, you know, kids, they grow up and they just have that selfish nature. You know, at Christmas time, like we're right around the corner, it's all about I want to write my Christmas list. It's all about me. What can I get? And it's hardly ever about what can I give. And the Bible flips that around is, how can you be a giver, and not only a giver, but actually do it cheerfully, not reluctantly or under any type of pressure? But how can you, just give from your heart? So this is something that we have to only go to God with, only go to, to be more like Jesus with, because it doesn't come naturally in our human nature. So, I've struggled with this at times about just being that cheerful giver, especially when things are tight. Things might be, tight for you. You're living from paycheck to paycheck, bill to bill, and I'll give when I reach, this point in my life. Whenever I can save up $1,000 or 50,000 or 100,000, whatever it is, then I will fill in the blank, give this much money. I'll give my 10%, or I'll give more, or whatever it is. But God says, wherever you're at, he wants you to give, and he wants you to give cheerfully. And so I think this is just a great message, especially around Christmas time. And one thing that my wife and I love to do is we love to sponsor like a family that, their children are not going to have a very nice Christmas. So we've done that the last few years, and just be able to give them a nice Christmas, give their kids a nice Christmas. That's something that, and I love doing that. I love, doing it cheerfully. But what is it, something that you can give this Christmas season, cheerfully? Maybe something is just paying for the person behind you at Starbucks. That's always something cool. There's this one group, Kent Clothier's group. I think they go to Toys R Us and pay off layaways. So go and do something like that. Giving money, giving to your church, whatever it is. I just say, it's whatever is between you and God, but do it, and he calls us to do it cheerfully.
Love that. I ain't got nothing to say on that. It makes me think on how I can take it up a notch this Christmas season to give.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the interview. I ain't got nothing to say.
What if God was one of us? We should change our spiritual foundations
to just a worship time with Jaren Barnes.
Anyways, we're gonna get on to our interview with Craig Cody, certified tax coach.
Boom. All right, Brett, hit us off. All right.
Guys, we are so excited for today's guest. We have Craig Cody from New York, and we're going to be talking a lot about the thing that you guys love to talk about, and that is taxes and how to save money on your taxes, because Craig is a certified tax coach. He's a certified public accountant, business owner, and a former New York City police officer, which I would love to get into some of the stories with that. He served 17 years on the force, but now he is, like I said, a tax coach, and he belongs to a select group of tax practitioners throughout the country who undergo extensive training and education on various tax planning techniques, strategies, and to remain certified. So with this organization, Craig has also co-authored a book that's on the Amazon bestseller list called Secrets of a Tax-Free Life. Would you like to be tax-free, Jaren?
Yes, sir.
I can't wait to get into this. So thank you, Craig, for joining us today. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm totally psyched.
Yeah, man, me too. Hey, thank you so much for serving on the force. And our audience probably doesn't know this, but my dad was actually an Oakland police officer out in California for about 10-ish years, I think. So, yeah. So thank you. Got a lot of love for them police officers.
Thank you.
So, to kick this thing off, man, tell us your origin story. I mean, you hail from New York. How did you grow up? Why did you get into tax? It's such an exciting career choice. It's like everyone in our audience is just like, woohoo, taxes.
Taxes are exciting, trust me. But how to come about? Well, I followed in my dad's footsteps. He was a New York City police officer. So I went to college and left after 3 years. I was an economics major. decided I was going to be a cop. Kind of did what everybody else in the community did. You went on to civil service. And I did that for a number of years. And at some point, I said I need a little bit more control over my destiny. I went back to school, got my accounting degree. I left after 17 years and went to work for an international accounting firm. I always liked estate planning because I was able to save people money. A number of years ago, they changed the rules, and basically, a married couple needs more than $15 million to really have some serious tax savings in a plan. So we started looking at other ways to save people, and we stumbled upon tax planning. And so here I am. My firm is about maybe 15 years old, but I've really been growing it the last 6 or 7 years.
It's awesome.
That's so cool. And just for our listeners out there, most of the people, I'm sure, they see their accountant once per year. They go, they get their returns, and that's the only time they really ever see them. And you're talking about tax planning. So what is the difference between, going and see your accountant once per year, doing your tax returns versus what your firm does, and that is tax planning? Kind of go in and dive into what that even means.
Sure. So what the typical accountant does is, and he does it very well, is he puts the right numbers in the right boxes, and he's reactive. It's kind of like he's looking in the rearview mirror because you guys aren't talking, and you're going to see him in March or April, and he's recording history. What a tax planner does is we're proactive. Okay, we want to make history, so we look for legal ways to reduce your taxes and help you keep more of what you make. So it's just a matter of being proactive and communicating a lot versus waiting around until March and April.
So on that, what would you suggest an entrepreneur in real estate? How frequently should they be touching base with their accountant? Should they be touching base like once a quarter? What do you think?
It depends on how many real estate deals they're doing. If they're doing a lot of deals, okay, they should be probably every month they should have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a lengthy conversation, but they should have a conversation, right? You should know your numbers. So if you communicate with your CPA on a regular basis, you'll know your numbers.
So I wanted to ask, because I actually just sat down with a CPA for the first time ever as like a 1099 last week, actually last Monday. And something that they were talking about is when you're self-employed, which probably the vast majority of our audience is either 1099, self-employed, what have you. He was telling me that a lot of people, they'll wait until paying their taxes just once a year, even though they get penalized by the IRS, because it's really only a certain interest rate penalty that they have to pay, like 4% or something like that. Which for most entrepreneurs, if they had the convenience of waiting to just doing taxes once a year, they probably would be like, well, 4% just gives me more time and more leverage to do that. I just wanted to dive in on what your advice is. Do you think that that's irresponsible, or do you think that that's okay if that's how they want to do things? Because I know specifically in like transaction oriented businesses like wholesaling, to do your taxes each quarter would be, you might have a month or two that's off, right? But your taxes for the entire year would be easier, in my mind, to handle, because you can actually see what you made for the year.
So the way it works is it's really based on the year before. So depending on where your income is, you have to have somewhere between 100 or 110% of last year's tax paid in by January 15th. All right. Okay. And the numbers can change slightly. And if you don't make those payments quarterly, like equally quarterly, you'll get assessed that penalty. Okay. So now I've worked with clients where they don't want to pay $1 penalty or $1 interest. All right.
And what is the penalty?
It's a calculation. It's an interest penalty, and I couldn't really tell you what it is, but I don't know, 5% maybe. It's not a huge number, but it's enough that certain people would rather, I'd rather not pay that money. And then there's other people that just look at it as a cost of doing business. I have access to this money. Obviously, you want to make sure you have the money, because you don't want to come to April and not have any cash to pay your taxes.
Right.
So It's a personal preference. We always give our clients, we give them the quarterly estimates. If they choose not to make them, they're doing it because they know, that they're choosing not to do it. So everybody
Okay.
kind of has their own personal preference.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, now you kind of talked about the difference between tax planning versus, kind of being proactive versus reactive. I know that a lot of people, they just don't really like to think about taxes because it's kind of like, you're really not really thinking about it, and you're eating, if you're trying to lose weight, but you're eating a bunch of pizza and ding dongs all the time, you just don't want to sit on the scale. You just want to just kind of
Or if you come back from
ignore
Florida
it. Yeah.
and eat a bunch of food. Like no one else I know. Like Brett Snodgrass.
You just want to kind of ignore it and whatnot. But kind of take us into tax planning. Where do you start with a client, and what are some of the, first key highlight write-offs that you might talk about? Kind of give us, a little bit of a breakdown of where do you start at?
Sure. Well, the first thing that we do, and we basically deal with real estate investors and small business owners. We don't do a lot of individual returns for people that aren't our business clients or real estate investor clients. So the first thing we do is we take a look at last year's taxes, and we do an analysis, and we look for missed opportunities and missed deductions. From there, we figure out, okay, you've missed, $40,000 in deductions. That could be, $10, $12, $15,000 a year in extra taxes that you've overpaid. We put together a plan if they're interested in it, and they pay us for a plan. Our plan fee is 100% refundable, and in over 6.5 years, no one has ever asked for a refund. It's instant gratification. That's really what it is. They're talking about ROI is over 400%. So from there, we go forward, but it all starts with a plan. So what are some ideas, right? What are some ways clients out there your listeners can save some money? So the number one thing is plan. Okay, that's the biggest problem is people fail to plan. Number two is having the wrong business entity. All right, depending on what they're doing, are they in the right entity for their circumstances and their business? So two people could be in the same business, and LLC may be good for one, and S corp may be good for the other. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Then we talk about retirement plan, which is kind of like I say, I'm not going to tell you about a retirement plan because the guy at Fidelity, the guy at your bank is going to tell you about a retirement plan. That's a kind of a ground ball. Medical benefits, we have something called a medical expense reimbursement plan, which depending on the type of entity you're in, it lets you write off your kids' braces, where most people don't get the benefit of those deductions on their personal return. Hiring your kids, if you could do it legitimately and document it. Tax court actually ruled you could hire your children as young as 7. I typically don't recommend it until they're about 11.
Man, I can hire my daughter next year.
That's awesome.
Right.
That's cool.
You just have to document everything she does.
Wow.
Then here's one, the home office. We've all heard of the home office deduction. Maybe our accountant or CPA said it's a red flag. It's not a red flag. It's not a huge deduction, but what it does is it opens the door to a lot of other things if you do it legitimately. Okay. If you have a home office, then travel between your home office and other places of business is deductible. It also allows for what we call a home athletic facility, which could be your pool or your home gym. So now that becomes deductible. So there's those kind of things. There's obviously meals and entertainment, your car expenses and stuff like that. And a lot of these things are in my book that I'm actually going to offer your listeners, the 10 most expensive tax mistakes that cost business owners thousands. We'll give you a link where they could get it mailed to them for free.
That's really awesome. Thanks so much for that, Craig. I'm actually going to link that in the show notes for everybody, guys. So it's going to be www.simplewholesaling.com/episode 87.
Cool.
It's really kind of you. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, definitely. And so you've kind of mentioned some great tips, kind of where to get started. So if someone wants to use your services, you mentioned, you go in, you kind of assess last year's taxes, right? And see kind of some things that might have been missed. Are they able, if they did miss some things, let's say, you mentioned $40,000 that they missed in deductions, and they paid $10,000 or $12 more than they should have in taxes. Are they able to go back and to recoup that money? And how is that? Or is this something just moving forward?
No, if there's a mistake, yes. And, in the last probably 14 months, we found one $87,000 mistake and a one $30,000 mistake.
Wow.
So they were able to go back and recoup, that money,
That's
which
awesome.
kind of makes me look like a hero.
Yeah, I mean, it's really instant. I mean, we're in America. It's instant gratification. So,
Yes.
that's pretty cool.
So here, I want to take this conversation. I'm going to be completely selfish in this interview. I apologize, but this is very, very timely, like I said, for me. So moving forward, talking about tax planning, right? Everyone in our audience is most likely an entrepreneur. If they're not an entrepreneur, they have a side gig that they're building up into like their own entrepreneurial thing, right? That means we're busy, super, super busy. And I know Brett over here, I'm surprised he hasn't fired me yet because I'm the worst person on the team when it comes to tracking receipts. Like he's like, hey, you need to upload your receipts. You need to upload your receipts. And I honestly just struggle with, holding the receipts, bringing them in. I struggle with, keeping the details in order and having a strategy. So, can you dive into, for our audience and for me personally, kind of some tips where we can automate our collection of tax related things? Because I know that if just a few good tips would be a game changer for everybody involved.
Sure. Keep it real simple. Okay. Put everything on, use one credit card or a debit card. All right. Now you have a record of everything, or write checks if people still write checks, and then keep an envelope and just stuff your receipts in there. All right. You'll know what the things are when whoever's doing your bookkeeping, when they go through everything, they'll figure out what everything is. If they have a question, they'll ask you. If obviously there's a big expense, they're going to ask you what it's about. All right. But you'll have everything in one place if you ever need it. All right. But just having the documentation of whether it's the credit card, the debit card, or the bank account with the checks makes it a lot easier than paying stuff for cash, because now you got to make sure you record that receipt and stuff. It just becomes a huge headache for everybody. And what we see is there's more missed deductions when people operate that way than when they operate on a real, paper transaction type of basis.
So do you think that is there an app or anything for like millennials like me where I could just like take a picture of it or something and then throw the receipt away?
So I'm not a millennial. All right. And, that's, I don't use any apps like that, at least. And I guess for my age, I'm probably a little bit more tech savvy than the average guy, but, I couldn't point you in the right direction as far as those kind of apps. There's a million of them out there. I know that. But the bottom line is, keep track of everything, whether it's, if you put it on your credit card, okay, at the end of the month, give it to your bookkeeper. All right. And let it go through that credit card and let it record it. Because if you're trying to put all that stuff together at the end of the year, I'm telling you from experience, you're going to miss a whole lot of deductions and you're going to pay more tax than you should.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this quick question, and maybe you have a good answer for it. So let's say you do put everything on your credit card and you have it all documented as far as your credit card or checking account, but you don't have the actual physical receipt. I don't know if you've ever been through an audit, but if that happens, are they going to get in trouble? If there's $50,000 in receipts that are missing, even though they can look at your credit card and see that it was spent, towards a business expense, could that be a red flag?
Could it be a problem? It could be a problem. Most receipts, especially if they're on a credit card, you're going to be able to get them. All right. If that $50,000 is McDonald's, you're going to have a problem. Mm-hmm. All right. I tell people anytime you make any type of large purchase, you definitely want to make sure you keep that receipt. But your typical day-to-day stuff, there's a record of it. I've been through audits for people before. We've never had an issue. They'll look at the credit card. They're also going to look to see, okay, the personal stuff that's on there, are you deducting the personal stuff? All right. You don't want to be deducting the personal stuff.
So when you say large expense, like, do you have like a certain number, like a threshold?
No. Depends on that person and what kind of business they're in, but if it's over $1,000, you want to make sure you remember what it is.
Okay.
So it's a good idea to have that receipt because typical day-to-day stuff, you're not spending that kind of money. Those are the bigger purchases. Maybe the recurring transactions, your coaching programs and stuff like that are going to be bigger transactions than the things that are going on, office supplies and stuff like that.
Now, do you guys offer bookkeeping services as well?
Our firm does for our clients. What we do is each client is assigned a bookkeeper, a CPA, and then me to oversee everything. And we actually do a call every month.
Wow, that's awesome.
Cool. Would you recommend, like right now I have a bookkeeper and he's been catching us up on this past year and just, some different things, but would you recommend your bookkeeper also being, or his wife's an accountant. So he's a CFO of a business too. So he's pretty savvy, but would you recommend your bookkeeper or your accountant also being your tax planner, or would you have them be separate?
No, as long as you're comfortable with that, that's fine. And if you have confidence that they know what they're doing, that's okay. Right. The only thing you don't want them to be doing is if they're writing checks and they're doing your bookkeeping and doing your accounting, that's probably not a good idea. You want to have some separation in there.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Other than that, if you're happy and you think he's doing a good job, that's fine.
Okay. You mind if I ask, you mentioned your firm. So I just want to kind of give it in. I don't want to, if you don't want to talk about all this, that's fine. But I just want to really, sometimes I dig into the nitty gritty of stuff. So, what is a typical fee if someone wants to use your services and say, hey, I feel like I've been overpaying the last couple of years. I really haven't planned. I've been really retroactive in my taxes. And I want to use your services and I'll send you my last year's tax returns or 2 years or whatever it is. What would that look like? What would a fee be in the process?
So our typical client is working with us on a monthly basis. So they're billed on a monthly basis. So we kind of basically take that annual fee and we divide it by 12. Now, it varies, all right, depending on, but I would say the average is somewhere between $750 and $1,000 a month. And that's for the accounting, the business taxes, the personal taxes.
Okay.
Some are more, some are less, but I would say the average client is in that ballpark. And I like to tell people, don't look at it as an expense, okay? Because I might be charging you $12,000 a year, but I'm showing you ways to save $30,000 a year. So
yeah, and anybody would look at that as a return on investment. And that's the thing about, I think people can't get their mind around taxes because they always think of it as an expense. You're going to pay taxes no matter what.
Yeah.
And, but if you were right now to take an investment and you took $12,000 and you laid it down and somebody gave you 30 grand back, everybody would say, right on, let's do it. But then they just can't get their mind around this tax because they just think it's an expense, not as a return on investment.
Exactly. And when we lay out the analysis, when we actually do it before we do a tax plan for somebody, and we have our plan fee in there, we have the first year ROI in there. All right. And, I typically, I want to be saving that person close to $20,000 a year in taxes.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Is there another program, in order to get into your program, do you have to do the whole ball of wax where, you're using your bookkeeper, using your tax planning services and all that? Or could someone keep using their own bookkeeper, but use your tax planning services?
So we can do tax planning and then you can continue working with who you're working with, or you could work with us. About a third of the plans we do, they turn into regular monthly clients. But we actually started something about a month ago for the real estate investor. So the guy that only has a couple of properties, he's kind of just starting out. He wants to know how to do everything right. So we started what we call a small real estate investor tax plan. And if they do that with us, we make sure they're set up correctly. They work with their bookkeeper. At the end of the year, they give us their P&L for the different properties, et cetera, and we take care of the taxes. That would be the only way we do that. But most small business owners, if they want to work with us, we're doing everything. And they may have their own bookkeeper, okay, and we just get them set up on a platform where we're both looking at the same stuff.
So do you guys refer people to QuickBooks, or, what are your suggestions in terms of, again, what does it look like to track? Or do you suggest people just hand all that, just here's my raw data and then their bookkeeper puts it in? Well,
they should be working with a bookkeeper that's doing that stuff on a monthly basis. Yes. And there's so many different things that out there that they can use if they want to use QuickBooks Online. I think, the real estate guy buying and selling real estate, he's got to keep track of all those expenses, because you know what, in 6 months or 12 months, he's not going to remember what he spent on what.
100%. I don't know what I spent on last week.
Definitely. Are there any other benefits besides saving money to, in tax planning, that, you get things organized, you're a real estate entrepreneur like most of our listeners are. Is there any other benefits besides just, saving some dollars?
Well, just having your business set up, so when you go to sell things, you know what your costs really are, so you know your numbers. So that's a big benefit. You don't want to, it's kind of, I was just listening to a podcast where, the guy priced out a job for $3,000 and it turns out it was costing him $4,500. So he obviously didn't know his numbers. So you should know your numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And one thing is, I've been trying to clean up our books here because, if you're going to go into a bank trying to get a loan, I mean, when you're doing business like this, entrepreneurial businesses, like Craig said, you got to know your numbers. And if you go into a bank and they're like, oh, show me your balance sheet. I don't even know what that is. I don't know where I get that. You just look, it's kind of embarrassing. So this stuff really just helps with the organization of your business. It really just makes it legit. And I think that's key.
Yes.
So on that, actually, I wanted to ask you, because if I'm being honest here, I'm the guy that doesn't know what did you call it? A balance sheet? I have no idea. Completely lost. So, I'm just curious for our audience and again, for me personally, what are the top 3 spreadsheets we need to have, that we're keeping on point? Cause I know you have Aaliyah do the profit breakdown, right? What are the things that we should be doing as real estate investors?
So you need to know when you purchased, right? What you purchased for, what improvements you've put into those properties. So when you go to sell it, okay, basically what kind of profit you have, what depreciation you've taken. If you don't know the purchase price, you don't know how to depreciate it. For those holding properties longer, there's all sorts of other things that, go into cost segregation studies and stuff like that, where they could actually accelerate their depreciation. So, but you need to know those beginning numbers. How much did you actually pay for that property?
I think that's good. And so that's kind of what we do, the profit breakdown sheet. And then our bookkeeper kind of takes those numbers and puts it into a QuickBooks. And I think that's a great thing to get started. Any other resources or things that, real estate entrepreneurs should think about, Craig, before we go into the next section of the show?
I just think there's a lot of information out there, and you need to keep your eyes and ears open to find that nice next tidbit out there.
I think there's definitely something too, as entrepreneurs, we think we can do everything in every department of the business, and taxes is the thing that I just don't know nothing about. I took a business class. I was a business management major for the freshman year in college, and the accounting class was the thing that just dude, this sucks. I don't enjoy this at all. And I don't enjoy putting the numbers in the boxes and trying to figure it all out. So hiring a professional, again, it's a return on investment,
Right.
So.
And where is your money or your time best spent? Is it spent doing what you do where you make your money, or, going to Staples?
Yeah. And I had to learn the hard way, guys. I mean, I used to, at the end of the year, I would watch a whole TV series of some, silly TV series, because I was up, 5 nights in a row just doing my taxes, trying to get everything organized for my accountant. And it was terrible. I had no life, and it was crazy. So it's good to plan. So,
yes.
So thanks, Craig. We ready to go in the next section?
Think so, man.
1, 2, 3, going deep. So in this section of the show, Craig, we like to just ask some more personal questions about you and your life. And we really want to hit on, you being a police officer in New York City. I has probably some wild stories with that. And thank you again for your service. But how has being a police officer impacted how you interact with your clients as a CPA?
Oh, it's basically, it taught me, or I learned how to communicate with people across all walks of life. So I think it's made me a much better communicator, especially in my field where communication may not be a strong point. dealing with, I might have been a cop in Midtown Manhattan where I was dealing with some big corporate CEO and, working someplace uptown in a lesser economic area and dealing with people that, were a little bit different. So you had to be able to communicate with people on all levels and, be able to elicit responses that you needed. So I think it was really a great primer for communication.
That's awesome. How do you, just curious, like, I know a lot of the times police officers see the worst of humanity all the time. So, it's easy to form kind of an opinion of, like I know, like I've heard stories, like there was a guy I actually went on a Christian retreat with, who was a police officer, and there's just certain things that he put in his life that because he's seen so many people get hurt from it. So for example, like at the dinner table, he always faces the door. He always like does certain things to kind of put some protection or act in a certain way that that just his experience has caused him to be more aware. How have you seen all that stuff as a police officer, continuing to be able to like trust people or read people in terms of clients? Go into that a little bit.
Well, I think it's definitely given me some insight into, people's psyches and stuff like that. And, my BS meter might be a little bit more in tune than others, because I've been lied to by the best. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think, really you need to be able to treat everybody the way you want to be treated. Everybody starts off the same spot. Okay. And it's up to them which way it goes. So treat everyone good, treat everyone like I used to tell the younger rookies, treat everybody like you're talking to your mother. Okay. Mm-hmm. And let's see where it goes from there, because most often that'll work. It doesn't always work, but most often. And as far as sitting with my back against the wall, my wife will get on me all the time because we'll be at a restaurant and my eyes are always going, it's like focus, focus. But, I had a great run. So hopefully I didn't pick up too many bad habits, stuff like that might be not socially acceptable.
That's funny. So last question in the Going Deep section, your business right now seems like it's taken off, it's growing, and that's awesome. I love, what you're doing. So how are you able to continue to grow your business at the same time? You talked about your wife, growing your family and your personal life as well.
You need to be able to take that phone and put it down somewhere, turn it off, and, disconnect. And it's hard sometimes as a business owner because your mind may always be thinking, but, it comes down to, it's all about family and friends. So that's the big picture. And, you don't want to be that guy that's working at 16-hour days, 7 days a week. And, you might come home with a lot of money, but you come home to an empty house.
Yeah.
That's not worth it. So you got to keep the real world in line.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, definitely. We just got back from a trip from Florida with our whole team, and that's just what it's all about for me, just being able to build relationships, spend time with each other, and just to pour into each other. And I think that's what it's all about. So
yeah, amen.
Yeah. No, that's we have lunch basically in the office every day together because you see, who's doing what kids are doing what. It's a better way, a more fun way to run a business.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
definitely. Cool, Craig. Well, in this last section of the show, we just like to end kind of on a touch of randomness note, and that's what this section is called. So we're going to ask you a couple of questions here and just kind of, name the first thing that comes to your mind. So we're going to go back to, when you were a cop. So do you have a random cop story that you'd like to share? It doesn't have to be super intense or, where you busted a huge drug deal in New York City.
My dad went into a woman's house and she had empty cat skulls and she was eating cat brains.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's crazy, California.
We didn't mean to steal.
Intense.
We didn't mean to steal your thunder, Craig.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
You have a random story.
Yeah, I'll give you a random story. And this is probably a little bit later in my career. I was in a fugitive apprehension team, and it was early morning. We went to Starbucks, and it was not too long after the first World Trade Center bombing, and the judge lived in the area, and every day you'd see him walking his like poodle with like 5 or 6 U.S. Marshals trailing him, and it went on every day. So we're in Starbucks, and it was the guy I'm with. He's actually a practicing attorney, and we were both sergeants, and he's online. It's his turn to buy, and he's like next up, and he's waiting for the coffee, and all of a sudden I see a guy run out the door, and then I see another guy run out the door, and then the guy I'm with, he runs out the door. So now I got to run out the door. And when I came on the police department, I was in great shape. I had about 15 years on at the time. I wasn't in the best shape. And by the time I get out the door, these guys are like a full almost avenue up away from me. And I'm like, there's no way I'm catching them. So I grab a cab and I commandeer a cab and I take it like 2.5 avenues up, and I get out of the car and I'm fresh. And a guy I'm with, he's huffing and puffing, and he's looking at me like, oh my God, I'm dying and you're fresh as a whistle. So we caught the guy. We actually caught the guy, and he actually was stealing people's purses, and that's where they were actually sitting. We didn't even know it. They were sitting on the Starbucks because somebody was stealing women's purses. And but the moral of the story was, you could get a lot more done with what's up here than always relying on your brawn. And the older, wiser man, is sometimes a lot better. So that's a little bit of a funny story.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
funny. Yeah, it's like smarter versus, just grit.
Yeah.
So, take the cab. Get there faster.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, final question. I'm just curious, what's the best book that you have ever read, either non-career related or career related?
Wow. This is going to sound crazy, but it was actually, my son was probably in 1st or 2nd grade, and he had to read something called Basher 52. And it was probably not too long after the fighter pilot was shot down over Bosnia. And he had to like evade for 3 days before they found him. And they wound up making a movie about it and everything like that. But it was just like a true story, but it was made for children. And that book always stood with me.
It's awesome.
And I read a lot of books.
I'm going to link it in the show notes at www.simplewholesaling.com/episode 87.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you. That pretty much ends our time today, Craig. And I know that I got so much out of this show, and I'm right away going to start looking into tax planning. Might be your guys' services or wherever I need to go. But if someone wants to find out more information about you, your firm, your company, where do they go?
They could go to our website, which is www.craigcodyandcompany.com. They can call us at 516-869-4051 or email at craig@ccodycpa.com. Or just Google me and you'll get all that information.
Awesome.
Awesome, guys. And that's going to be in the show notes as well. And give us the name of the free book that you're giving away one more time.
It's the 10 most expensive tax mistakes that cost business owners thousands.
Nice. I'm definitely going to read that. Please send me a copy of that. I'll send you my info.
Definitely.
Sounds good, Craig. Well, that's a wrap today, guys. We had Craig Cody and tax accountant, certified tax coach. And thank you so much, Craig. Have a great day.
Thank you very much for having me. Take care, guys.